Close your eyes and let your mind drift as we return to the world of Digimon World on the original PlayStation. From hidden mechanics in File City to little-known secrets scattered across File Island, these quiet details will give your mind something soft to follow while your body relaxes. So, get comfortable, settle in, and let these 140 Digimon World facts gently guide you towards sleep. When you think of Digimon World on PS1, one of the first things that comes to mind is how unusual its opening feels compared to other games of that era. Instead of waking up in a bustling town, or diving straight into an intense battle, you arrive in a world that feels strangely quiet and half-forgotten. File City is there, Jijimon is there, your partner is there, but most of the island's life is missing, as if someone pressed pause on the digital world and walked away. That emptiness is not an accident. The File City is intentionally presented as a skeleton of what it used to be, with empty spaces and unused corners waiting to be filled. Every missing NPC and every closed-off spot becomes a silent promise that something will eventually return. The Jijimon's house, where you first appear, is one of the coziest starting points in any monster-raising game. It's a small wooden room filled with warm tones, simple textures, and an old Digimon who calmly explains that something has gone wrong. He tells you that Digimon have forgotten who they are and have wandered away, turning what used to be a thriving city into a digital ghost town. That idea of creatures losing their memories and disappearing is surprisingly gentle for a story hook. It isn't a villain destroying the world with dramatic explosions. It's a quieter kind of problem, almost like a case of shared amnesia. The game invites you not just to fight, but to help these Digimon remember, and to invite them back home. Even your player character's arrival feels more like slipping into a dream than being summoned to a war. You're a kid from the real world who is suddenly pulled into the digital world after interacting with a Digivice and console. It fits perfectly with the feeling of playing late at night as a child, imagining your own console as a gateway into somewhere else. Your partner Digimon appears very early, and the bond with it is the core of the game's emotional weight. Unlike later Digimon games that give you a large roster to switch between, Digimon World focuses intensely on one partner at a time. That single focus makes every meal, every training session, and every evolution feel more significant. Naming your partner is one of the first active choices you make. On the old PlayStation, this meant slowly scrolling through letters, one at a time, hearing the same little sound effect with each button press. The slowness reinforces the idea that this is not something you rush. It's a small, deliberate ceremony that makes your partner feel personal. When you step outside into File City for the first time, the atmosphere is almost startling in how low-key it is. No crowds, no loud fanfare, just a quiet square, a few small paths, and a simple background track looping calmly. The camera angle shows you just enough to hint at future growth, empty building spaces, simple structures, and paths leading out to the rest of the island. The File City theme is designed to be easy to listen to for long stretches. It's repetitive in a way that can fade into the background, turning into a sort of gentle hum while you move around. For a sleepy player, it almost feels like white noise inside the digital world, something you can listen to without needing to focus on it. One of the most distinctive things about Digimon World is how physical your partner feels. Rather than being an abstract icon on a menu, it follows you, asks for your attention, and reacts to the world. Hungry, tired, needing the bathroom. These states are all communicated with straightforward but charming icons above your partner's head. The bathroom system is infamous and endearing at the same time. Throughout File City and the island, there are dedicated toilets that your partner can use, which is an unusually literal way to represent care in a monster-raising game. If you don't reach one in time, your partner simply has an accident, and the game quietly counts it as a care mistake that affects evolution later. Those care mistakes are one of the clearest examples of how Digimon World blends story and mechanics. The game never yells at you for making them. Instead, they gently shift your partner's possible evolution lines. A rookie that's treated perfectly might become a strong, clean-looking champion, while one that's neglected a bit may turn into a more comical or grimy form. This system reflects one of the central ideas of Digimon as a franchise, that bonds and behavior can change a creature's destiny. In a calm, mechanical way, the game is always taking notes on how you act. Feeding, resting, training, bathroom breaks, scolding, praise, all of it is registered and turned into future possibilities. Hunger in Digimon World is handled mostly through the meat farm behind Jijimon's house. At the start of the game, you can visit this small field and receive a daily ration of meat from a friendly Digimon. This interaction does more than refill a hunger bar. It creates a daily rhythm, a little check-in that becomes part of your routine. The meat itself is visually iconic, huge, cartoonish chunks with a bone sticking out, planted in the ground like crops. Seeing meat growing in rows in the soil gives the digital world a surreal but cozy logic. In this world, even food grows in a way that feels like a simple repeating pattern you can rely on. As you walk around File City in these early moments, you're free to move without constant interruptions. There are no aggressive NPCs ambushing you inside town, no timers telling you to hurry. This lack of pressure lets you explore at your own pace, which is especially relaxing when you're playing late at night. The day-night cycle quietly reinforces the feeling that this is a living world with its own rhythm. The lighting changes, colors shift, and your partner eventually becomes tired, signaling it's time to rest. You see time pass not only on a clock, but in the way the city looks and feels, leaning into a natural sense of daily structure. When your Digimon gets sleepy, a little tired icon appears, and eventually it will want to sleep. You can let it rest on the ground right where it stands, and the game transitions into a nighttime state. Watching your partner curl up and the world dim around it creates a surprisingly tender scene, especially for a polygonal creature on a PS1 screen. Jijimon's house acts like a narrative anchor and a mechanical one. It's where you began, it's where you can save, and it's where you return when things go very wrong. In a time when memory cards had limited space and saving wasn't always possible anywhere, that safe location felt important and reassuring. The very act of saving in Digimon World can feel comforting. You interact with Jijimon, choose to save, and see the familiar icon as data is written to the memory card. It gives you a sense of closure at the end of a session, like putting a bookmark into a favorite book before turning off the light. The Green Gym, just a short walk from the main square, is where many players first start to understand the game's training systems. Each machine represents a different stat: HP, offense, defense, speed, and so on. And using them plays a short animation of your Digimon working out. At the end of the sequence, you see stat gains, and sometimes a small note about tiredness, reinforcing the idea that improvement comes with cost. Training at the gym is both simple and easy to overdo. You can technically train back-to-back many times, but your partner's fatigue grows, and ignoring that leads to sickness or shortened lifespan. This encourages you to balance training with rest, creating a soft limit that stops the experience from turning into pure grinding. Even as you focus on numbers and stats, the game never lets you forget that your partner is meant to be a creature, not just a bundle of values. Small idle animations, like looking around, shifting its weight, or reacting to you keep it feeling present. These touches help maintain the illusion that you're raising a living being with needs instead of just managing a system. Stepping out of File City into native forest for the first time is a subtle change in tone. The music shifts, the environments become greener and more layered, and wild Digimon appear that you can battle or recruit. But even here, the game doesn't drown you in combat. Encounters are present, but not constant, allowing you to wander and look around. The early enemies you face outside File City are generally forgiving. They help you learn how battles work without overwhelming you with complex strategies or punishing damage. Losing a fight sends you back home, but doesn't erase your progress or destroy your partner outright, which keeps the stakes at a calm level. Battles in Digimon World are semi-automated, which fits nicely with a relaxed playstyle. You can influence tactics, positioning, and when to use items, but your Digimon acts according to its own AI. This means that especially for casual play, you spend a lot of time watching, guiding occasionally, and letting the fight play out like a little interactive scene. The commands you give, such as fight, run, or more specific tactical instructions, are delivered from a distance. Your character stands at the back, waving their arms and shouting encouragement. This reinforces the idea that you are a partner and caretaker, not someone directly throwing the punches yourself. Your relationship with your Digimon also includes discipline and praise, which affect its behavior and evolution. Scolding it can raise discipline, making it more obedient but possibly less cheerful, while praising it can increase happiness at the cost of discipline. These hidden meters provide another layer of subtle feedback on how you're choosing to interact with your partner. In File City, as you progress, you'll start to meet Digimon, who can be convinced to settle down and help rebuild the town. Some join after simple conversations, others after battles or small tasks, but all of them transform the city in some way once they return. This slow repopulation is one of the game's most satisfying long-term arcs. Each new resident usually brings a service or upgrade. A new shop might open, a restaurant might begin serving food, or an existing facility might expand. Seeing these changes over time gives File City a sense of growth that mirrors your partner's evolution. This gradual transformation is what makes restarting the game later in life so nostalgic. You remember the city not as it is in the beginning, but as it looked when it was full and alive. Re-experiencing the empty version at the start feels like visiting a place from your childhood before all the decorations were put up again. Time in Digimon World flows constantly, whether you're in the city or out exploring. Every action, walking, training, battling, takes a little slice of the day, and your partner's lifespan quietly ticks along with it. That limited lifespan, though it can be sad when a partner eventually passes on, also encourages you to appreciate the current run, instead of rushing ahead. Even the more awkward mechanics, like sickness and injury, are framed in a surprisingly gentle way. Your Digimon might wobble, show a distressed icon, or move more slowly, signaling that it needs treatment or rest. While there is some pressure to fix the problem, the presentation is still calm enough to keep the overall mood from becoming harsh. As you get used to the daily routine, feeding, training, fighting, saving, you begin to internalize the game's pace. It becomes easier to predict when your partner will be tired, when it will be hungry, and when a bathroom trip is likely. That predictability creates comfort. You're no longer reacting to random surprises, but moving in sync with the digital world's own rhythm. File City, throughout all of this, remains your anchor. No matter how far you explore, you always return there to store items, manage resources, and simply pause. Standing still in the square for a moment, with the music looping and your partner at your side, is almost like taking a breath before your next real-world day. When you play Digimon World at night, that rhythm can easily blend with your own. The in-game day closes, your partner sleeps, you save your progress, and the console hums quietly in the background. It becomes very natural to let the digital world wind down alongside you, closing the gap between game time and bedtime. And in that gentle early game space before the island opens fully, before the hardest battles, before the big revelations, Digimon World shows what kind of experience it wants to be. Not just a challenge to conquer, but a strange, cozy place you can return to, where caring for a single digital creature is enough. From this calm beginning in File City, the rest of the island will slowly unfold, one quiet detail at a time. Once you've settled into the rhythm of File City, the next thing that starts to stand out is the green gym. It sits just a short walk away from the main square, close enough to feel like part of your daily routine. If File City is the home of your partner's heart, the green gym is the home of its numbers. At first glance, the gym looks simple. A couple of training machines, a sign, a Digimon or two standing around. But this small corner of the city hides some of the most important mechanics in Digimon World. Each training machine focuses on one particular stat. HP, MP, offense, defense, speed, and brains all have their own dedicated setup. Every time you choose a machine, you're making a tiny decision about who your partner is going to become. When you start a training drill, the game shows a short animation of your Digimon working out. Lifting, jumping, concentrating. Each exercise is exaggerated and cartoonish, but feeling somehow serious at the same time. Behind those simple movements, numbers are quietly shifting, and your partner's future is changing. The HP machine gives your Digimon more health, letting it endure more hits in battle. The MP machine increases the pool for using techniques, which is especially important for moves with high cost. Offense and defense adjust how hard you hit and how hard you're hit in return, while speed and brains influence your partner's behavior and responsiveness. Brains, in particular, is one of the more subtle stats. A Digimon with low brains won't always listen to your commands, acting more on instinct than direction. As brains increase, your partner becomes more reliable in battle, responding to tactics and instructions with more precision. Each training session costs time and energy. After a few rounds, your Digimon will start to show signs of fatigue. The little tiredness icon is the game's polite way of saying, "That's enough for now." If you ignore those warnings and keep pushing, the consequences stack up. Tired Digimon are more likely to get sick, misbehave, or have their lifespan shortened. The game is gently teaching you that constant grinding isn't healthy, not for your partner, and maybe not for you either. Food ties into training in a very direct way. Heavier Digimon might evolve differently than lighter ones, and training itself can affect weight. Feeding meat, mushrooms, or special items becomes part of the overall shaping of your partner's body and stats. Weight is one of those quiet variables that many players didn't fully understand on their first run. You notice your Digimon getting too heavy or too skinny, but the game never gives you a giant warning screen. Instead, it lets you discover over time how diet influences evolution paths and performance. Care mistakes, which start at the bathroom and continue through missed hunger or sleep cues, also interact with training. A perfectly raised Digimon with few mistakes is more likely to achieve powerful, clean-looking evolutions. A partner with more mistakes may lean toward messier or more chaotic forms. Behind the scenes, Digimon World is tracking many of these variables with surprising detail for its time. How many times you trained a certain stat, how many battles you fought, how many times your Digimon got sick, all of it is stored. The result is an evolution system that feels less like a fixed tree and more like a reflection of your habits. Because of that, training isn't just about making numbers higher. It's about deciding what kind of life your partner is living. Are you the kind of caretaker who focuses on power at all costs, or someone who lets stats grow more naturally while prioritizing happiness and rest? The Green Gym is the most obvious training location, but it's not the only one. Certain areas outside File City offer alternative ways to raise stats. Battles, items, and even specific screens can contribute to growth in subtle ways. Fighting in the wild is itself a form of training. Every victory brings experience in the broadest sense. Techs can be learned, and stats may increase. Watching your Digimon grow stronger through real battles feels different from watching a bar fill at the gym. Learning techniques is one of the most exciting parts of combat progression. Each Digimon species has access to certain tech pools, and seeing a new move pop up can feel like discovering a hidden treasure. The element of randomness, whether a move is learned at the end of a battle or not, adds a tiny thrill every time you win. Brains also influence technique behavior. A smarter Digimon is better at using techs in appropriate situations, responding to enemy actions with partial understanding. In a sleepy playthrough, this means you can sit back a little more, trusting your partner to do the right thing while you just guide lightly from the sidelines. Discipline and happiness form another invisible pair of important values. Scolding your Digimon when it misbehaves raises discipline, making it more obedient but potentially less cheerful. Praising it, on the other hand, increases happiness, but might lower discipline over time. Balancing these two metrics is like balancing strictness and affection in a relationship. Too much discipline and your partner may feel rigid, too little and it might refuse commands or act out. The game never lectures you about this, it simply lets you see the results in your partner's behavior. Sickness is a quieter part of the training loop, but it plays a big role over the long term. If you push your Digimon too hard, feed it strange items, or leave it in certain harsh environments, it can get ill. Symptoms like lowered movement speed, distressed icons, and occasional refusal to act signal that something is wrong. Medicine and rest are the primary ways to handle sickness. You can buy items to cure or prevent status problems, but often the best remedy is simply letting your Digimon sleep. Once again, the game nudges you toward a slower, more considerate pace. As you get more experienced, you might start to recognize training builds. Certain evolution lines benefit from specific stat distributions or weight ranges. Knowing that can guide your choices from the very beginning of a run, turning every training session into part of a larger plan. But what's interesting is that Digimon World still feels welcoming, even if you don't understand all of this. You can play casually, feeding when hungry icons appear, training when you feel like it, and letting evolution surprise you. The game works both as a system to master and as a soft, mysterious space where you just see what happens. In many ways, that's what makes it such a good candidate for a sleep video. You can listen to these mechanics and think, oh, that's how that worked. Or you can ignore the details and just enjoy the vibe. The structure of stats, training, and evolution becomes like a gentle hum underneath the story of File Island. Over time, you learn the rough cycles of a partner's life. As they evolve from in-training to rookie to champion and beyond, you watch their stats rise and their appearance change. Every training session, every battle, every bedtime becomes part of that journey. Eventually, though, every partner's life in Digimon World comes to an end. Old age or bad conditions will eventually cause a Digimon to pass on. When that happens, you're not thrown out of the game. Instead, a new cycle begins with a new egg. That rebirth is one of the most quietly comforting parts of the game. Your partner's body is gone, but what you learned about stats, training, and care stays with you. The next run is shaped by all the small lessons from the previous one. This cyclical design turns the game into a kind of digital reincarnation loop. You raise, you train, you battle, you sleep, and then you start again. Nothing is truly lost, because every experience alters how you'll treat the next Digimon. The green gym, the meat farm, the bathroom icons, the training sessions, the moments of sickness and recovery, all of these blend into a single pattern. It's a pattern that can feel almost hypnotic when you play for long stretches. Feed, train, walk, battle, rest, save, repeat. And as your real-world mind listens to this pattern, it can mirror that calm repetition. You imagine the machines clanking, the icons appearing, the numbers rising slowly. You watch in your mind's eye as a little polygonal partner digitrains under a hazy green sky. With each cycle, the details become softer and more familiar. You don't have to remember every stat threshold or formula to appreciate what's happening. It's enough to know that your care is being quietly translated into growth, one small decision at a time. In the end, the training systems in Digimon World aren't just there to make stronger Digimon. They're there to give you a reason to spend time with your partner, to form habits, to feel responsible for something beyond yourself. And while your body lies still, listening, those soft, structured mechanics give your thoughts something gentle to follow, leading you further into rest. From these hidden stat secrets and slow days at the green gym, your attention can drift outward again. Because outside the city and its routines, File Island is full of Digimon waiting to return home. And slowly, one by one, they'll turn that empty town into a living, breathing place again. As you spend more time in File City, that early emptiness starts to feel less like a design choice and more like an invitation. The quiet streets, the unused plots of land, the closed buildings, all of them are waiting for someone to come home. And slowly, one by one, the island begins sending its residents back to you. The first recruits are often the ones closest to the city itself. Digimon you meet in nearby areas, just a short walk from the main square, are the ones you're most likely to bring back early. Each one of them arrives with a purpose, turning the city from a shell into a small, functional community. Agumon is one of the earliest and most iconic of these. You encounter it not as a distant legendary creature, but as a local troublemaker guarding a stash. Once dealt with, Agumon returns to the city and opens a shop, giving you a reliable place to buy basic items. That first shop changes your daily routine. Suddenly, you don't have to rely only on random drops or limited starting supplies. You can pick up healing items, MP floppies, and other essentials, turning File City into a real preparation hub. Palmon is another early recruit, whose presence has a huge impact on the feel of the city. When Palmon joins, the humble meat field behind Jijimon's house gets an upgrade. Your daily ration of meat increases, giving you more flexibility with feeding and training. This change does more than adjust numbers. It makes the farm look fuller, livelier, and more productive, reflecting the idea that the land itself responds to the Digimon who live there. The more residents you bring back, the more the environment seems to agree that File City is worth investing in. Kunamon, found lazily sleeping on a log in Kunamon's bed, is one of those recruits that feels like a small secret. At first, it's just a strange Digimon lying in an out-of-the-way spot that many players might miss. Once recruited, it adds a sense that not every new resident is obvious. Some require curiosity and a bit of wandering. As your roster of city dwellers grows, you start to notice the concept of prosperity points, an invisible score that measures how developed File City is. Each new recruit contributes to this value, and certain story milestones depend on reaching specific thresholds. It turns the act of recruiting into both a narrative goal and a quiet collection task. Prosperity points work almost like a town experience bar. Instead of your character leveling up, the city does. The more Digimon you persuade to return, the closer you move toward unlocking new areas, story events, and hidden features. Some Digimon recruitments are straightforward. You might simply talk to them, help with a small request, or win a single battle. Others involve multi-step side quests, revisiting locations or waiting for certain conditions to be met. Monochromon, for example, runs a shop in a trial scenario where you have to manage prices and make a profit. If you succeed, it joins File City as a full-time merchant. This small business minigame adds a quiet layer of life simulation to the town's growth. The city's appearance changes noticeably as more residents arrive. Buildings spring up in previously empty spaces, stalls open, and new signs appear. What was once a bare square gradually becomes a bustling, if modest, digital town. Digimon like Centurumon, Birdramon, and others bring important services beyond just shops. Birdramon, especially, introduces a transport system that makes returning to far-off areas much easier. This makes exploration feel less like a chore and more like a relaxed back and forth between the wild and your home base. The restaurant is another key addition to File City's life. Run by a dedicated Digimon chef, it lets you purchase meals that affect your partner's stats, weight, and sometimes happiness. Eating at the restaurant becomes a little ritual, one that feels oddly similar to taking your friend out for dinner. The item bank and warehouse services offered by certain recruits add a sense of security. Instead of worrying about limited inventory space, you can store items for later use. That ability to tuck things away for the future mirrors the way saving your game preserves your progress. Many of the side quests for recruiting Digimon are small, self-contained stories. You might help a restless Digimon find purpose, challenge a cocky fighter who just needs a proper match, or calm someone who's gotten lost. Each of these stories ends with the same result: another resident coming home. What's interesting is how often these recruits redefine the city's atmosphere. A Digimon that seemed hostile or difficult in the wild becomes friendly and helpful once settled. The transformation reinforces the theme that File Island's troubles are about confusion and disconnection more than true evil. Even gross or weird Digimon get this treatment. Creatures like Sukamon or Numamon might seem like jokes at first, but they too can end up with roles in the city. By giving them jobs and personalities, the game quietly suggests that every Digimon has a place if you make room for them. Some recruits modify the city in less obvious ways. They might change the music in certain places, adjust dialogue, or unlock new options in existing buildings. These subtle changes reward players who pay attention to the details of their growing town. NPC dialogue in File City is dynamic. As the city develops, residents will comment on how things are changing. They might mention new services, talk about how happy they are to be back, or hint at other Digimon still missing somewhere out on the island. This ongoing commentary gives the city a conversational life. Even if you're just walking around between errands, you can pick up small pieces of world building and hints. It feels like checking in on neighbors in a small village where everyone knows each other. One of the cozy things about File City's design is how compact it remains, even at full development. It never becomes a sprawling metropolis you can get lost in. Instead, everything stays within a short jog of the central square, preserving that feeling of a tightly knit community. The layout naturally forms little routes you might run without thinking. From the square to the meat farm, from the farm to the gym to the shop, from the shop back to Jijimon's. Once you have more services, these loops just get richer and more interesting, not longer and more confusing. As the city fills, you may find yourself making checklists in your head. Visit the restaurant, drop items in the bank, check new stock at the shop, see if any NPCs have fresh dialogue. This gives File City the feeling of a daily routine hub, like a personal digital neighborhood you maintain. Recruiting Digimon from more distant areas like Drill Tunnel, Great Canyon, or Friesland adds extra satisfaction. You travel far away, face tougher obstacles, and then bring back a new friend whose presence is visible every time you return. There's a warm sense of completion in seeing those residents standing in the square or running their shops. Some recruits even tie into each other's stories. A Digimon you bring back might comment on someone you haven't met yet, or mention a place that now feels more important. In this way, File City becomes a sort of narrative hub, connecting different corners of File Island through casual conversations. The visual evolution of the city mirrors your own progress as a tamer. At the beginning, you have a weak rookie and a nearly empty town. Later, you might have a powerful champion or ultimate and a fully developed city buzzing with Digimon. Despite all these upgrades, File City never loses its cozy, low-poly charm. The buildings are still simple, the textures still soft, the camera still fixed at familiar angles. It doesn't try to become something it's not. It just becomes a fuller version of what it was. The feeling of coming back after a long adventure is one of the game's quiet highlights. You see the same paths, the same square, the same residents waiting in their spots. After intense battles or stressful exploration, stepping into File City feels like exhaling. At night, a developed File City has its own ambience. The soft lighting and the presence of more Digimon make it feel like a town that's alive even after dark. You can imagine its residents closing up their shops, chatting quietly, and preparing for the next day. Prosperity points continue to climb as you recruit more Digimon, and certain major story events won't trigger until you hit specific values. This means that building the city isn't just optional flavor, it's woven into the main progression. The game's message is clear: saving File Island means rebuilding File City. For players who enjoy completion, filling File City with every possible resident becomes a satisfying long-term goal. You can look at your prosperity rating, cross-check which Digimon you've met, and track down the last missing few. That process feels less like a checklist and more like reuniting a scattered family. Even after you've maxed out the city, spending time there doesn't lose its appeal. You still need to manage items, finances, food, and equipment. Your partner still needs care, and the city remains the best place to handle that. In the context of a sleep-focused viewing, File City's growth arc is especially soothing. Listening to how each Digimon changes the town is like hearing about new neighbors moving into a small village. Over time, the mental picture becomes more detailed and more comforting. You can imagine walking through the city in your mind, passing the bank where your items are safe, visiting the restaurant where your partner enjoys a meal, heading toward the gym with a determined but sleepy Digimon at your side. The more you picture it, the more File City starts to feel like a place you could almost step into if you closed your eyes just a little tighter. Every resident you've recruited, every side quest you've completed, and every building that has sprung up is a reflection of your effort. The city would still be empty without you. Knowing that gives a quiet sense of ownership and belonging, which is part of why revisiting the game years later still feels so special. And as you lie there listening, maybe remembering some of those recruits, or discovering them for the first time, File City becomes more than just a hub in an old PS1 game. It becomes a small digital hometown your thoughts can wander back to whenever you need somewhere familiar and safe. From this cozy center, the rest of File Island spreads out like a patchwork quilt of forests, caves, deserts, and icy plains, waiting to be explored at a slow, sleepy pace. In the next stretches of the journey, those outer regions will come into focus: native forest, tropical jungle, ancient dino region, and beyond. Each one has its own quiet secrets, its own recruitable Digimon, its own atmosphere. But no matter how far you go, you'll always find yourself coming back to this little city you helped bring back to life. Once File City starts to feel a little more alive, your attention naturally drifts outward, toward the paths leaving town. The first of these paths usually leads you into native forest, a place that serves as Digimon World's true introduction to exploration. It's close enough to feel safe, but wild enough to suggest that File Island is far bigger and stranger than the city's square. Native forest is a dense, looping area made up of twisting screens and repeated trees. Its simple design can make it easy to get turned around, especially on your first visit. But that slight confusion is part of the mood, making the forest feel like a dream, where the same scenery keeps reappearing as you walk. The music in native forest is gentle but more adventurous than the File City theme. It keeps a relaxed tempo while adding a bit of mystery, encouraging you to keep moving forward. You're no longer just standing in a safe hub, you're actively stepping into the unknown. Here, wild Digimon begin to appear as both opponents and potential future residents of File City. Mushroomon, Gabumon, and other early game Digimon can be found roaming, ready to challenge you or trigger small events. Each encounter reinforces the idea that the island is filled with individuals who all have their own reasons for being out here. Kunamon's bed is one of the most memorable little spots in native forest. It's a dead-end screen with a simple log and a sleeping Kunamon lying on it. If you visit at the right time or interact in the right way, this dozing Digimon can become another recruit, turning a strange nap scene into a small story. The layout of native forest encourages you to make mental maps instead of relying on waypoints or minimaps. You begin to remember the screen with the log, the screen with the NPC, or the path that leads back toward File City. Over time, this builds a feeling of familiarity, like slowly learning the back paths of a forest near your house. Items are scattered around the forest in subtle ways. Mushrooms, recovery items, and sometimes rarer finds appear on the ground, inviting you to check corners and edges of each screen. Exploration is rewarded, not just with progress, but with small boosts that make your journey smoother. The appearance of random mushrooms in particular gives native forest a sense of being alive. Things grow here, even if they're digital. You start to associate the forest with gathering, foraging, and finding quiet resources rather than purely fighting. At certain points, native forest connects into tropical jungle, a region that feels thicker, warmer, and more humid in its atmosphere. The color palette shifts, and the layout becomes more complex, easing you into deeper exploration. If native forest feels like the edge of the island, tropical jungle starts to feel like its interior. Tropical jungle adds water, bridges, and more layered screens to the mix. You'll see small streams, narrow paths, and areas that initially look like dead ends until you notice a small exit at the edge. The more you walk through it, the more it feels like a tangled network of digital vines and roots. This region is home to Digimon like Vegimon, who can have unusual recruitment conditions. Sometimes you're asked to bring specific items or to visit at particular times. These requests subtly teach you to think about the island as an interconnected system rather than a series of isolated zones. Tropical jungle also acts as a crossroads toward other unique areas. From here you can find routes toward the Amida Forest, the swampy Overdell Cemetery, or even toward more distant sections of the island. It's a place where the map starts to open up, showing you how many directions your journey could go. Overdell Cemetery is one of the first places where Digimon World shows its moodier side. The palette darkens, the music becomes more somber, and the area feels haunted without being truly frightening. It's a reminder that the digital world can contain not just cozy towns and green forests, but quiet, reflective places as well. In Overdell, you'll meet Digimon like Bakumon, who have a ghostly, eerie aesthetic. Yet even here, the tone of the game remains calm rather than horror-focused. The spooky Digimon still speak, still have goals, and often still end up wanting to return to File City in the end. Moving deeper into the island, you might encounter areas with mist, ruins, or shifting time mechanics, like the ancient Dino region. These locations take the simple forest formula and twist it into something stranger. Suddenly, screens feel older, heavier, or less stable than the ones around File City. The ancient Dino region is notable for its manipulation of time. In some parts of the area, time passes more quickly, affecting your Digimon's lifespan and hunger. These mechanics aren't shouted at you, they're discovered through observation and experimentation. The visuals of the ancient Dino region give it a feeling of being a preserved fragment of an older digital world. Rocky platforms, skeletal remains, and unusual ground textures make it feel like a museum mixed with a battlefield. Walking through it at a slow pace, you can almost sense echoes of battles that took place long before you arrived. The presence of dinosaur-type Digimon in this region, such as Tyrannomon, reinforces the prehistoric theme. Their size and strength contrast sharply with the more common rookie forms you meet closer to the city. Encountering them for the first time can feel like stepping into a deeper, more dangerous layer of the island's history. Yet even in these seemingly harsh areas, the overall tempo of the game remains measured. You're not constantly bombarded by enemies or forced into rapid decisions. You always have space to step back, check your items, tend to your Digimon's needs, and move at your own pace. Throughout native forest, tropical jungle, Overdell, and the ancient Dino region, bathrooms and rest opportunities still exist. Their presence keeps the exploration loop tied to the core care mechanics. No matter how far you roam, you're still responsible for feeding, resting, and cleaning up after your partner. Because of that, these zones never feel completely detached from File City. Even when you're surrounded by misty ruins or standing in front of ancient bones, you're still thinking about when you'll head back home. The world feels connected by your routine as much as by its actual pathways. Certain screens in these early exploration areas are easy to get attached to. You might remember the screen with the strange rock, the bridge over the stream, or the cliff with a single tree. These visual anchors help you build an internal map of File Island that lives in your memory long after you stop playing. Hidden items and one-time events reinforce the importance of paying attention. A Digimon might only appear at certain times of day, or an item might show up after a specific trigger. These design choices reward players who explore slowly and curiously, instead of sprinting from objective to objective. Sometimes, early exploration will bring you up against enemies that feel a bit too strong. Your partner might struggle, take heavy damage, or even lose a battle. In those moments, the safe option is always to retreat, regroup, and come back later with more training. This pattern, venturing out, testing your limits, then returning to File City, creates a comforting loop. You don't have to conquer every area on your first try. The island is patient, waiting for you to be ready instead of pushing you forward before your time. There's also a subtle change in how the game feels once you've been through these early zones a few times. The first run through native forest might feel confusing, but the third or fourth time, it becomes familiar. You start to recognize enemy placements, item spots, and shortcuts without really thinking about it. That familiarity can be very soothing. Knowing the path through the forest, the route through the jungle, the way around the cemetery, turns exploration into a relaxed walk rather than a tense trek. Your mind can wander while your hands follow well-worn patterns on the controller. For many players, these early areas are also where they accidentally overextend their partner's lifespan. Too much training, too many battles, and not enough rest can accelerate aging without you realizing it. When your partner eventually passes on, it often happens after a trip out into these zones. The return to an egg after that first loss can feel bittersweet. You've grown attached to a particular form, a particular partner, and a particular set of routines. But the game quietly invites you to start again, this time using everything you've learned about the forest, the jungle, and the ruins. Because these areas stay consistent between runs, they become touchstones for each new partner. You might raise a different rookie, choose different stats, or recruit Digimon in a different order. But the paths through native forest and tropical jungle remain the same, like well-traveled roads you know by heart. You may even find yourself approaching them at different times of day on purpose. Visiting certain screens at night, watching enemy patterns change, or simply seeing the color palette shift gives the same locations a new mood. It's a simple trick that keeps them from feeling stale, even after many hours. The early exploration zones also introduced gentle environmental storytelling. Bones scattered on the ground in the ancient Dino region suggest forgotten battles. Ruins and gravestones hint at older structures and older generations of Digimon. These details never get fully explained in long cutscenes. Instead, they sit quietly in the background, letting your imagination fill in the gaps. That restraint keeps the world feeling bigger than what's shown on screen. For a sleepy listener, these locations are easy to picture in loose, hazy images. A looping forest, a warm jungle, a foggy graveyard, a stony canyon filled with old bones. They're the kind of places your mind can drift through slowly, while the specifics of stats and mechanics fade into a soft blur. As your exploration of these regions continues, you gradually unlock more connections between them. Shortcuts, warp points, and new exits open up, shrinking the island in terms of travel time, but expanding it in terms of narrative connections. You begin to see File Island, not as isolated zones, but as a single organism with many organs. Every time you bring back another Digimon from these early areas to File City, the value of your explorations is reinforced. A forest rival becomes a shopkeeper, a jungle wanderer becomes a chef, a ghost becomes a quirky resident. The wild turns into the domestic, and the island's scattered lives slowly converge on your little town. In this way, your early journeys through native forest, tropical jungle, Overdell, and the ancient Dino region become the foundation of everything that follows. Later, more dangerous areas will open up, and the stakes will rise. But these first walks among the trees and ruins are where you learn how the digital world breathes. You learn how to manage distance from File City, how to judge when to turn back, how to read your partner's needs against the difficulty of the enemies ahead. You begin to understand which items to carry, which battles to avoid, and which screens are good resting spots. All of that knowledge settles into you quietly, like sand settling at the bottom of a clear pool. And as you think about these paths now, about that first time you stepped into the forest, or the first time you saw the ancient bones of the Dino region, your own memories start to mix with the game's design. You remember not just what the screens looked like, but where you were when you played, how old you were, and what it felt like to have this whole digital island opening up in front of you. Those layers of memory are part of what makes revisiting Digimon World feel like returning to a dream you once had, and slowly remembering the way through it, one screen at a time. As you move further away from the forests and jungles wrapped around File City, the tone of File Island begins to shift. The soft greens and organic shapes give way to rock, metal, and the steady sense that something is being built, or carved, or forced into shape. That shift is embodied perfectly in one of the most memorable places in Digimon World, Drill Tunnel. Drill Tunnel feels different from the moment you step inside. The music becomes heavier and more industrial, with a slow, grinding rhythm that matches the work being done there. Instead of wind and birds, you hear the echo of drills, footsteps on stone, and the distant clank of metal on rock. The Digimon who live in Drill Tunnel are mostly Drimogamon, mole-like creatures dedicated to digging through the island's rocky heart. They're not villains or bosses in the traditional sense, they're workers with a job to do. When you first arrive, you find them in the middle of a project that has been going on for a while and will continue even when you leave. One of the central ideas of Drill Tunnel is that progress takes time, and not just in the grind for XP sense. Certain parts of the tunnel only become accessible after enough in-game days pass, representing the work of the Drimogamon continuing off-screen. You don't see every swing of their drills, but you see the results when previously blocked passages open. This use of in-game time makes Drill Tunnel feel alive in a unique way. You're not the hero walking in and fixing everything instantly. You're someone checking in on an ongoing project. The world moves, slowly, even when you're not watching. One of the Drimogamon serves as a sort of foreman, coordinating the digging operations. He explains the current issues like blocked paths or lack of airflow, and often needs your help to push the work forward. These tasks tie your journey directly into the tunnel's development. Sometimes you'll find parts of the tunnel too hot or too dangerous for your Digimon as they are. You may be forced to back out, train more, or come back when your partner has evolved and grown stronger. This back and forth reinforces the idea that not every obstacle is meant to be cleared immediately. Battles in Drill Tunnel often feel tougher and more deliberate. The rocky terrain and narrow paths mean you can't just weave around every encounter. The Digimon here are stronger, their attacks hit harder, and your decisions about healing and retreat become more important. The tunnel itself splits into multiple branches as work progresses. One route leads deeper into the hot underground, while others eventually connect to different parts of the island. As these connections unlock, Drill Tunnel transforms from an isolated dungeon into a crucial crossroads. One of the most satisfying payoffs is when the tunnel breaks through and creates a shortcut between regions. A path that once required a long, winding walk across several screens can suddenly be traversed through a direct underground route. This change doesn't just save you time, it makes the island feel more coherently connected. Some scenes in Drill Tunnel capture a kind of industrial coziness. You'll see Agumon diligently drilling, resting, or talking about their work with a sense of pride. There's a worksite energy, but it's framed not as exploitation but as a community project. The heat deeper in the tunnel becomes a mechanical and atmospheric factor. Your Digimon may show signs of stress or fatigue more quickly, and the environments glow with warm, reddish tones. You can almost feel the temperature rising, even though it's all just colors and sound. At the bottom of some branches, you may encounter boss-like Digimon who challenge your progress. These tougher fights act as stress tests for how well you've managed training, items, and tactics up to this point. Winning them often leads directly to new progress in the tunnel or the recruitment of important Digimon. When certain obstacles are cleared, like a massive rock blocking airflow, the whole atmosphere of the tunnel improves. NPCs comment on how it feels better, safer, or easier to work. These reactions make the tunnel feel like a shared space you've helped make more livable. Drill Tunnel also acts as a subtle tutorial for the idea that the digital world has its own infrastructure. It's not just wild nature and mysterious ruins. There are constructed passages, work crews, and functional networks. The island is both organic and manufactured, and Drill Tunnel sits at that intersection. Once you've spent enough time with the Agumon and progressed their digging, new exits lead you into another strange region, Savannah. If Drill Tunnel represents the inside of the island, Savannah represents its mechanical skin. Here, metal and machinery begin to dominate the landscape. Savannah is a mix of open plains and futuristic debris. You'll see giant gears half buried in the ground, strange metal structures jutting out of the earth, and odd mechanical remnants scattered like fossils. It feels like a place where the digital world's code has solidified into rusted hardware. The Digimon that live here often match the theme. Mechanically inclined or physically tough, Digimon patrol the area, giving battles a more serious tone than the playful scuffles in the early forests. Their presence makes you feel like you've stepped into a tougher neighborhood of the island. Savannah's layout is more open than the winding tunnels or dense forests. Wide screens and long stretches of land create a feeling of exposed space rather than tight corridors. This openness can be relaxing and unnerving at the same time. Certain side quests in Savannah involve stealth, timing, or observation. You might have to chase specific Digimon, interrupt bandits, or navigate around particular patrols. These tasks add variety to the usual loop of train, battle, recruit. One memorable location tied to Savannah's wider region is the Ogre Fortress. This structure houses bandit-like Digimon who cause trouble for travelers and locals alike. Engaging with them leads to some of the more intense early to mid-game battles. Taking on the Ogre Fortress feels like tackling a small storyline arc. You infiltrate, confront leaders, and eventually bring some of the troublemakers back to File City, or at least neutralize them. Afterward, the region feels less hostile, as if you've helped stabilize that part of the island. Savannah also highlights how Digimon World quietly blends technology and nature. You're walking on digital grass 1 minute and past huge embedded gears the next. The world doesn't divide these elements cleanly. It stacks them together, like overlapping layers of an old computer interface. Time continues to play its hidden role in these areas. By the time you're comfortably exploring Gear Savannah and the surroundings, several in-game days may have passed. Your partner might be approaching a new evolution, or edging closer to old age. This creates an interesting contrast. On the surface, you're dealing with machinery, bandits, and open plains. Underneath, an invisible clock is ticking, guiding your Digimon's life toward its next phase. Managing time becomes a soft, constant consideration. You start planning trips with lifespan and hunger in mind. How far you can go, how many battles you can handle, when you need to return to the safety of File City. The more you play, the better you get at sensing where that invisible line sits. Certain Digimon in these regions comment on work, effort, or the passage of time. They talk about guarding places, digging, patrolling, or feeling tired from constant activity. Their dialogues echo the systems already running quietly in the background of your own journey. Exploring Drill Tunnel and Gear Savannah, with different partners across multiple runs, can feel surprisingly different each time. A fast, agile Digimon changes how you approach battles compared to a slow tank or a glass cannon mage. The environment stays the same, but your relationship to it shifts with your current partner's strengths and weaknesses. Because of that, the flow of time in Digimon World isn't just about clocks and days. It's about how your own understanding of the island changes with experience. The first time you come to Drill Tunnel, it's confusing and tough. The third time, it feels like visiting an old, bustling workshop you know well. Travel times shrink as more shortcuts and services unlock. What used to be a long, risky journey from File City to a distant region becomes a manageable trip thanks to drills, bridges, and transport services. The island gradually compresses around your knowledge, becoming easier to hold in your mind. This change makes revisiting older areas particularly comforting. You know what to expect, which hazards to avoid, and where the useful NPCs are. Instead of anxiety, you feel a kind of mastery, like a local guide leading a tour through a once foreign place. Drill Tunnel and Gear Savannah, when seen in this context, are more than just mid-game zones. They're physical representations of effort, infrastructure, and the quiet grind of time. Machines grind away in the dark, tunnels connect distant regions, and open plains filled with gears hint at past and future work. For a sleepy listener, picturing these areas can be strangely calming. You might imagine the slow turning of giant gears under a twilight sky, or the rhythmic thunk-thunk-thunk of drills echoing in a cool cavern. You might visualize your Digimon walking a familiar path through metal and rock, breathing steadily, tired but not in danger. As your mind drifts, the specifics of each quest or battle can blur. What remains is the sense of motion, forward, back, deeper into the tunnel, across the savannah, returning home beneath a darkening sky. Those movements mirror the gentle rhythm of your own breathing as you lie still, listening. And just as the Agumon keep digging, whether you're watching or not, the digital world you remember keeps existing in the background of your memories. You can leave it for years, return, and find it still there, low poly, patient, and waiting for you to pick up where you left off. From these mechanical heartbeats of Drill Tunnel and the open, gear-strewn fields of Gear Savannah, the island will guide you onward to even harsher climates. Deserts of ice, towering canyons, and molten caves lit by digital fire. By the time you reach Great Canyon, File Island no longer feels like just a small circle around File City. The ground starts to fall away beneath you, replaced by cliffs, ledges, and narrow walkways that seem to hang in the air. It's as if the island is stretching upward, showing you that the digital world has vertical layers as well as horizontal ones. Great Canyon is built out of stacked screens and pathways. You move along cliffsides, climb ramps, and cross narrow platforms where a single misstep can send you sliding down to a lower area. This vertical design makes the region feel bigger than it actually is, like a maze spiraling around itself. The music in Great Canyon has a slightly more adventurous and serious tone. It keeps the same sleepy tempo as the rest of the game, but there's a hint of tension in the melody. Well, you're not in immediate danger every second, but you can feel that the enemies here are stronger, more confident. Visually, the canyon is all reds, browns, and sharp edges. The stone surfaces are simple textures, but they create the impression of harsh, dry rock. The contrast with the forests and plains you've crossed makes it clear that you've entered a harsher climate. The Digimon you encounter in Great Canyon often feel like guardians of height and space. Bird-type and desert-themed Digimon watch the paths and ledges, challenging you at awkward positions. Battles can feel a little more intense here, simply because of the environment they're happening in. One of the key figures tied to this area is Birdramon. If you manage to recruit Birdramon, you unlock one of the most valuable services in the entire game, fast travel. From then on, you can use Birdramon's transport to quickly move between regions you've already visited. This transport service changes how you think about the whole island. Places that felt distant suddenly become accessible with just a short trip. It's like discovering a hidden network of buses after walking everywhere on foot. Great Canyon also ties heavily into Agrumon's storyline. Agumon and his gang appear in several parts of the game, often causing trouble or blocking your progress. Confronting them in bases and hideouts around the canyon gives this region the feeling of a bandit territory. The Ogre Fortress, if you track it down, becomes a central location for this conflict. Inside, you face a series of battles and small scenes that play out like a self-contained arc. Defeating Agumon here doesn't just clear an obstacle, it shifts the balance of the island a little more in your favor. As you move up and down the canyon, shortcuts gradually become clear. Ladders, ramps, and paths that were previously hidden or blocked become available. The area slowly transforms from a confusing labyrinth into a familiar set of routes you can run through almost on autopilot. After spending time in this dry, high-up region, the transition to somewhere like Friesland feels dramatic. Friesland replaces sharp rock and dust with snow, ice, and cold air you can almost imagine feeling on your skin. The palette shifts again, bathing everything in whites and pale blues. Friesland's music carries a cold, distant feeling, but it remains gentle. There's no blizzard sound or aggressive storm. Instead, it feels like standing in a quiet, snowy field at night. The track loops softly, adding to the sense that this is a place where sound is muffled by the cold. Snow-covered paths and icy surfaces define the region. You'll see frozen lakes, slippery-looking ground, and clusters of ice formations that give shape to the landscape. Even with the PS1's limitations, the area successfully communicates winter in a simple, iconic way. The Digimon who live here are naturally adapted to the cold. Penguin, Frigimon, and other ice or snow-themed Digimon become your frequent companions and opponents. Their designs fit the environment so well that it's hard to imagine them living anywhere else. One of the most memorable parts of Friesland is Penguin's curling minigame. Here, you step away from battling and raising stats to play a little ice-based sport. It's small, light, and optional, but it adds a playful texture to the otherwise chilly landscape. Frigimon, with its white, bear-like appearance, often plays a more nurturing role. In some routes, it can help you survive the cold, or guide you safely through the snow. Its presence turns the harshness of the climate into something softer and more manageable. The cold itself can be treated almost like an invisible hazard. Your Digimon might become tired more quickly, or the long distances between safe spots can feel more demanding. You have to think a bit more carefully about how far you're willing to push before returning to File City. In some versions of your journey, you might arrive in Friesland underleveled. Battles feel riskier, and the unfamiliar enemies hit harder than you'd like. If that happens, the best approach is often to accept your limits and retreat rather than stubbornly forcing progress. Snowy environments in games often have a particular emotional tone, and Friesland is no exception. Walking across the blank white surfaces feels strangely quiet, as if the digital world itself is whispering. Even when you're fighting, the backdrop never stops being calm. The combination of high cliffs in Great Canyon and flat, open snow in Friesland creates a nice contrast. One region focuses on vertical movement, narrow ledges and heights, while the other emphasizes wide, cold spaces. Both give your partner different kinds of physical challenges to face. Exploring these extreme climates also highlights how durable your Digimon's daily needs really are. Bathroom breaks, hunger, and fatigue do not disappear in the cold or on cliff edges. You still have to find toilets, feed your partner, and let it sleep, even in the middle of a snowfield. This consistency keeps the care loop grounded, no matter how exotic the environment becomes. You're not just in a snow level or in a canyon level. You're still a caretaker watching over a living creature. That continuity makes the world feel more coherent and less like a collection of disconnected stages. Great Canyon and Friesland also mark a point in the game where your knowledge from previous runs starts to matter more. If you remember where certain Digimon are, what they want, and how to recruit them, you can move more efficiently. Your familiarity turns what used to be dangerous treks into confident expeditions. At the same time, each partner you raise brings something different to these regions. A bulky, tanky Digimon reacts to enemies differently than a quick, fragile one. You notice how the same environment can feel safe with one partner and intimidating with another. In Friesland, some events and recruitments may require patience and timing. You might have to return at different times of day or with different conditions met. This encourages you to see the Snowfields not just as a backdrop, but as a stage where quiet, specific events can occur. Both regions contribute strongly to the sense that File Island contains many climates within a small space. You can go from a dusty canyon to a frozen plain in a fairly short amount of in-game time. That compressed geography mirrors how the whole game feels like a dense, layered microcosm. If you imagine yourself within the world, the transitions between these climates can feel almost dreamlike. One moment you're climbing stone steps under a red sky, the next you're walking through falling snow. It's less like traveling across a realistic planet, and more like stepping between different moods or memories. For many players, the combination of Great Canyon and Friesland marks the point where the island starts to feel fully big. You've seen forests, jungles, work tunnels, mechanical fields, high cliffs, and frozen expanses. It becomes easier to believe that there are still more secrets hiding just out of sight. The story progression tied to these regions is often intertwined with recruiting key Digimon. Bringing them back to File City continues the cycle of growth there, making your hometown more capable and comfortable. Your efforts in the extremes directly improve the softness and safety of your base. Over time, you may develop a favorite route through these climates. Maybe you like to go Canyon Dotsa Tunnel City or Snowfield City Canyon, depending on your current goals. These circuits become habitual, familiar paths your mind can walk even when you're not actually playing. Thinking back on these places while lying in bed, it's easy to imagine the soundscapes layered on top of each other. The wind along the canyon cliffs, the crunch of snow underfoot, the industrial hum of drills echoing in your memory. All of them blend into a slow, steady background noise, like a digital lullaby built from different corners of File Island. And just as File City anchors your journey emotionally, regions like Great Canyon and Friesland anchor it geographically. They sit at the edges of your mental map, marking where the island begins to push you, test you, and show off its extremes. From there, your path will eventually bend toward even stranger locations, sewer systems, volcanic lairs, and hidden areas that lurk beneath or beyond what you've seen so far. By the time you're ready to move into the hottest and strangest parts of File Island, you've already seen forests, ice, tunnels, canyons, and mechanical plains. These areas test not just your stats, but your willingness to keep caring for your partner in environments that seem designed to wear both of you down. The next places you discover feel less like simple zones, and more like the hidden insides of the digital world, its volcanic core, its forgotten sewers, its tucked-away corners where the oddest Digimon live. The volcanic regions are usually your first taste of truly hostile terrain. Lava flows, glowing pits, and reddish lighting give the impression that the very ground is ready to burn you. Even though your character won't actually fall into the lava, the visuals alone are enough to make you tread more carefully. It doesn't abandon the slower, looping structure typical of Digimon World, but it leans into deeper sounds and more intense melodies. You can feel that you've moved into a place meant to be closer to the endgame, even if you can technically wander in earlier. The music in these lava-filled areas often carries a heavier, more ominous tone. Meramon is one of the key Digimon you associate with fiery regions. With its burning body and constant flames, it fits perfectly into the molten atmosphere. Interacting with Meramon often involves challenging battles or story beats tied to controlling or calming the area's destructive energy. These places don't invite you to linger the way File City or Native Forest do. They urge you to push through and then catch your breath later. Volcanic zones usually include narrow walkways over lava, cave-like interiors, and screens where the background seems to shimmer with heat. You might notice your Digimon's tiredness building more quickly here, or just feel it yourself as you navigate the bright, intense visuals. At the same time, the game's core rhythm doesn't change. Even while you're surrounded by digital fire, your partner still needs food, toilet breaks, and rest. That juxtaposition, normal care needs in an extreme environment, keeps the game grounded, no matter how dramatic the scenery becomes. Some of the more important opponents and recruitable Digimon in these regions are tied directly to the island's larger problems. They may be under the influence of the forces causing chaos on File Island, or simply in a rage that needs to be calmed. Helping them often means one more powerful ally for File City, and one less source of danger in the wild. Hidden rooms and optional screens are tucked away even in these dangerous areas. A corridor that looks like a dead end might hide a small chamber with an item, a one-time event, or a unique Digimon. Exploring thoroughly in such intimidating territory can feel risky, but the game quietly rewards your curiosity. Eventually, your path leads you away from fire and toward one of the strangest and most memorable biomes in Digimon World, the sewers. Here, the digital world takes a deliberately disgusting turn, filled with sludge, pipes, and Digimon that embody the game's weirder, grosser side. Yet somehow, even this mess ends up feeling oddly lovable. Zoedge areas and trash-filled zones are home to Digimon like Numemon and Sukamon. At first glance, they seem like joke evolutions or punishments for bad care, slimy, poop-themed, and silly. But the more time you spend with them, the more they become part of the world's charm. Numemon, with its green slime body and big eyes, is often associated with poor evolution results. That can be disappointing, but Digimon World cleverly makes even this failure an experience worth exploring. If your partner receives too many care mistakes, it might turn into a Numemon instead of a more heroic-looking form. Visiting them, you find yourself literally diving into the underbelly of File Island. Sukamon and its evolved form, King Sukamon, live in areas filled with digital waste. Their domains are often hidden behind pipes or buried within sewer-like spaces. Despite this, the mood never turns unbearable or truly horrific. These sewer regions remind you that the digital world is not just a pretty landscape. It has waste, runoff, and forgotten corners where discarded data accumulates. The simple graphics and light-hearted designs keep the tone more goofy than gross. Sukamon-related Digimon can provide services like item disposal or transformation. One fascinating element of these gross Digimon is that they're integrated into the city's life once you recruit them. Even digital trash gets a role, a job, and a place in File City's ecosystem. Hidden evolution paths are often tied to these stranger areas. Players who explore the sewers and lava zones thoroughly can discover evolutions that casual runs might never see. For example, some of the most powerful or unusual ultimates may require specific conditions involving weight, care mistakes, or extended stays in certain environments. Instead, it lets rumors, guidebooks, and experimentation fill in the blanks. The game never spells out every evolution condition explicitly. That mystery gives volcanic caverns and sewers an additional layer of intrigue beyond their surface-level themes. There's a quiet satisfaction in taking something unwanted, like Numemon or Sukamon, and discovering that it can evolve into something rare and impressive. For players, that transforms disappointment into curiosity. It's as if the game is telling you that even the slapstick, low-tier-looking Digimon can hold secret potential. You might pass the same pipe junction multiple times before realizing which exit leads where. Sewer corridors often twist and wrap back on themselves. This confusing structure reinforces the feeling that you're weaving through the intestines of the island's infrastructure. It doesn't try to terrify you. It leans into the absurdity of muck and sludge instead. The music in sewer areas tends to be quirky and offbeat. The result is that you spend more time smirking at the oddness than actually feeling disgusted. Environmental storytelling shows up here as well, just in a different flavor. Piles of digital waste, dripping textures, and scattered pipes suggest that the island has a long history of data being used, discarded, and repurposed. The sewers are less a place of evil and more a place of accumulation. It never entirely traps you in a punishing environment without relief. As with other regions, toilets and rest opportunities still pop up where you might least expect them. Even in a sewage system, the game gives you ways to care for your Digimon properly. You might find an unmarked passage that leads to a hidden room, a unique NPC, or a powerful item. These discoveries feel especially rewarding when they're tucked away in places most players would rather rush through. A lot of secret areas and special screens are connected to these gross or extreme zones. That design links the entire island together in a web of cause and effect. Some secret areas are only accessible after you've fulfilled specific conditions elsewhere. Prosperity thresholds, defeated bosses, or recruited Digimon can unlock previously closed doors. The city's comfort is literally built on top of the work you've done in the most uncomfortable places. Late-game File City upgrades often have roots in these deeper, stranger areas. By solving problems in the sewers or calming the volcanic zones, you can recruit Digimon who bring advanced services and facilities back home. This contrast between origin and final role makes the world feel more dynamic and interconnected. A creature you first met in a sewer full of waste might end up running a surprisingly vital business in the square. For example, new training options, expanded shops, or special item services can come from Digimon you'd never expect. Secret evolution rooms, rare item caches, and hidden bosses all contribute to Digimon World's sense of depth. That uncertainty invites replaying, re-exploring, and listening to other players' stories. Even after you've seen the map, a feeling lingers that there are cracks, nooks, and corners you might have missed. Experiencing these lava pits, sewers, and secret zones with multiple partners across separate lifetimes adds a sense of layering. One Digimon might struggle horribly here, another might thrive. The places stay the same, but your relationship with them keeps changing. For a sleepy mind, these regions make for vivid but oddly soft mental images. You can picture a small Digimon walking beside glowing lava, or waddling through a cartoonish sewer with pipes overhead. You can imagine murky water, flickering light, and the echo of footsteps in forgotten tunnels. The lava isn't hyper-realistic, the sludge isn't graphic, everything is stylized and simplified. Because the game's visuals are so low detail by modern standards, your brain has room to fill in the gaps. That simplification makes it easier to hold the entire scene in your head without overstimulation. As you think about these places, it's not the exact geometry you remember, but the feeling. The warmth and danger of the volcanic zones, the silliness and grime of the sewers, the thrill of stumbling into a hidden room. Those feelings linger like tones in a piece of music, even if the exact notes fade. Thematically, these locations also echo one of Digimon World's central ideas, that the digital world is messy but fixable. There are corrupted areas, polluted spaces, overheated caverns, and forgotten tunnels. But with enough care, enough battles, and enough recruiting, you can turn chaos into something closer to balance. That contrast makes home feel even safer when you finally reach it. Your Digimon shakes off the grime, you point yourselves in the direction of File City, and the world gradually shifts back from weird to familiar. Every time you walk back out of a sewer and into the open air of File Island, there's a sense of relief. The game uses discomfort to sharpen your sense of comfort. It's the same with the volcanic regions. Surviving their intensity makes the city and calmer zones seem even more peaceful. You don't just appreciate File City because of what it offers, but because of what you've endured elsewhere. By the time you've ventured through these fiery caves, fetid sewers, and hidden passages, you've seen most sides of File Island. You've walked through its forests, tunnels, gears, cliffs, snowfields, lava pits, and trash heaps. What remains, then, is not just another location, but the mountain that looms over everything, the place where the main story draws together. By the time you're ready to move into the hottest and strangest parts of File Island, you've already seen forests, ice, tunnels, canyons, and mechanical plains. The next places you discover feel less like simple zones, and more like the hidden insides of the digital world, its volcanic core, its forgotten sewers, its tucked-away corners where the oddest Digimon live. These areas test not just your stats, but your willingness to keep caring for your partner in environments that seem designed to wear both of you down. The volcanic regions are usually your first taste of truly hostile terrain. Lava flows, glowing pits, and reddish lighting give the impression that the very ground is ready to burn you. Even though your character won't actually fall into the lava, the visuals alone are enough to make you tread more carefully. The music in these lava-filled areas often carries a heavier, more ominous tone. It doesn't abandon the slower, looping structure typical of Digimon World, but it leans into deeper sounds and more intense melodies. You can feel that you've moved into a place meant to be closer to the endgame, even if you can technically wander in earlier. Meramon is one of the key Digimon you associate with fiery regions. With its burning body and constant flames, it fits perfectly into the molten atmosphere. Interacting with Meramon often involves challenging battles or story beats tied to controlling or calming the area's destructive energy. Volcanic zones usually include narrow walkways over lava, cave-like interiors, and screens where the background seems to shimmer with heat. You might notice your Digimon's tiredness building more quickly here, or just feel it yourself as you navigate the bright, intense visuals. These places don't invite you to linger the way File City or Native Forest do. They urge you to push through and then catch your breath later. At the same time, the game's core rhythm doesn't change. Even while you're surrounded by digital fire, your partner still needs food, toilet breaks, and rest. That juxtaposition, normal care needs in an extreme environment, keeps the game grounded, no matter how dramatic the scenery becomes. Some of the more important opponents and recruitable Digimon in these regions are tied directly to the island's larger problems. They may be under the influence of the forces causing chaos on File Island, or simply in a rage that needs to be calmed. Helping them often means one more powerful ally for File City, and one less source of danger in the wild. Hidden rooms and optional screens are tucked away even in these dangerous areas. A corridor that looks like a dead end might hide a small chamber with an item, a one-time event, or a unique Digimon. Exploring thoroughly in such intimidating territory can feel risky, but the game quietly rewards your curiosity. Eventually, your path leads you away from fire and toward one of the strangest and most memorable biomes in Digimon World, the sewers. Here, the digital world takes a deliberately disgusting turn, filled with sludge, pipes, and Digimon that embody the game's weirder, grosser side. Yet somehow, even this mess ends up feeling oddly lovable. Zoedge areas and trash-filled zones are home to Digimon like Numemon and Sukamon. At first glance, they seem like joke evolutions or punishments for bad care, slimy, poop-themed, and silly. But the more time you spend with them, the more they become part of the world's charm. Numemon, with its green slime body and big eyes, is often associated with poor evolution results. If your partner receives too many care mistakes, it might turn into a Numemon instead of a more heroic-looking form. That can be disappointing, but Digimon World cleverly makes even this failure an experience worth exploring. Sukamon and its evolved form, King Sukamon, live in areas filled with digital waste. Their domains are often hidden behind pipes or buried within sewer-like spaces. Visiting them, you find yourself literally diving into the underbelly of File Island. These sewer regions remind you that the digital world is not just a pretty landscape. It has waste, runoff, and forgotten corners where discarded data accumulates. Despite this, the mood never turns unbearable or truly horrific. The simple graphics and light-hearted designs keep the tone more goofy than gross. One fascinating element of these gross Digimon is that they're integrated into the city's life once you recruit them. Sukamon-related Digimon can provide services like item disposal or transformation. Even digital trash gets a role, a job, and a place in File City's ecosystem. Hidden evolution paths are often tied to these stranger areas. For example, some of the most powerful or unusual ultimates may require specific conditions involving weight, care mistakes, or extended stays in certain environments. Players who explore the sewers and lava zones thoroughly can discover evolutions that casual runs might never see. The game never spells out every evolution condition explicitly. Instead, it lets rumors, guidebooks, and experimentation fill in the blanks. That mystery gives volcanic caverns and sewers an additional layer of intrigue beyond their surface-level themes. There's a quiet satisfaction in taking something unwanted, like Numamon or Sukamon, and discovering that it can evolve into something rare and impressive. It's as if the game is telling you that even the slapstick, low-tier-looking Digimon can hold secret potential. For players, that transforms disappointment into curiosity. Sewer corridors often twist and wrap back on themselves. You might pass the same pipe junction multiple times before realizing which exit leads where. This confusing structure reinforces the feeling that you're weaving through the intestines of the island's infrastructure. The music in sewer areas tends to be quirky and offbeat. It doesn't try to terrify you. It leans into the absurdity of muck and sludge instead. The result is that you spend more time smirking at the oddness than actually feeling disgusted. Environmental storytelling shows up here as well, just in a different flavor. Piles of digital waste, dripping textures, and scattered pipes suggest that the island has a long history of data being used, discarded, and repurposed. The sewers are less a place of evil and more a place of accumulation. As with other regions, toilets and rest opportunities still pop up where you might least expect them. Even in a sewage system, the game gives you ways to care for your Digimon properly. It never entirely traps you in a punishing environment without relief. A lot of secret areas and special screens are connected to these gross or extreme zones. You might find an unmarked passage that leads to a hidden room, a unique NPC, or a powerful item. These discoveries feel especially rewarding when they're tucked away in places most players would rather rush through. Some secret areas are only accessible after you've fulfilled specific conditions elsewhere. Prosperity thresholds, defeated bosses, or recruited Digimon can unlock previously closed doors. That design links the entire island together in a web of cause and effect. Late-game File City upgrades often have roots in these deeper, stranger areas. By solving problems in the sewers or calming the volcanic zones, you can recruit Digimon who bring advanced services and facilities back home. The city's comfort is literally built on top of the work you've done in the most uncomfortable places. For example, new training options, expanded shops, or special item services can come from Digimon you'd never expect. A creature you first met in a sewer full of waste might end up running a surprisingly vital business in the square. This contrast between origin and final role makes the world feel more dynamic and interconnected. Secret evolution rooms, rare item caches, and hidden bosses all contribute to Digimon World's sense of depth. Even after you've seen the map, a feeling lingers that there are cracks, nooks, and corners you might have missed. That uncertainty invites replaying, re-exploring, and listening to other players' stories. Experiencing these lava pits, sewers, and secret zones with multiple partners across separate lifetimes adds a sense of layering. One Digimon might struggle horribly here, another might thrive. The places stay the same, but your relationship with them keeps changing. For a sleepy mind, these regions make for vivid but oddly soft mental images. You can picture a small Digimon walking beside glowing lava, or waddling through a cartoonish sewer with pipes overhead. You can imagine murky water, flickering light, and the echo of footsteps in forgotten tunnels. Because the game's visuals are so low detail by modern standards, your brain has room to fill in the gaps. The lava isn't hyper-realistic, the sludge isn't graphic, everything is stylized and simplified. That simplification makes it easier to hold the entire scene in your head without overstimulation. As you think about these places, it's not the exact geometry you remember, but the feeling. The warmth and danger of the volcanic zones, the silliness and grime of the sewers, the thrill of stumbling into a hidden room. Those feelings linger like tones in a piece of music, even if the exact notes fade. Thematically, these locations also echo one of Digimon World's central ideas, that the digital world is messy but fixable. There are corrupted areas, polluted spaces, overheated caverns, and forgotten tunnels. But with enough care, enough battles, and enough recruiting, you can turn chaos into something closer to balance. Every time you walk back out of a sewer and into the open air of File Island, there's a sense of relief. Your Digimon shakes off the grime. You point yourselves in the direction of File City, and the world gradually shifts back from weird to familiar. That contrast makes home feel even safer when you finally reach it. It's the same with the volcanic regions. Surviving their intensity makes the city and calmer zones seem even more peaceful. You don't just appreciate File City because of what it offers, but because of what you've endured elsewhere. The game uses discomfort to sharpen your sense of comfort. By the time you've ventured through these fiery caves, fetid sewers, and hidden passages, you've seen most sides of File Island. You've walked through its forests, tunnels, gears, cliffs, snowfields, lava pits, and trash heaps. What remains, then, is not just another location, but the mountain that looms over everything, the place where the main story draws together. That place is Mount Infinity, the towering structure that stands as the unofficial ceiling of your journey. Reaching it feels like stepping onto the final layer of a dream, where all the scattered hints and half-told stories begin to converge. And when you finally set foot there, all the training, care, and exploration you've done in every forest, tunnel, and sewer quietly follows you up the mountain. Mount Infinity feels different from every other place on File Island before you even step inside. On the map, and in your memory, it sits there like a quiet promise, a final destination that waits until you're ready. It's less a simple next area, and more a statement that your scattered journey around the island is finally coming together. Reaching Mount Infinity usually means you've done a lot already. You've rebuilt most of File City, recruited many Digimon, and seen how forests, tunnels, snowfields, and sewers all fit into the bigger picture. By the time you're standing at the base of the mountain, the island feels less like a collection of levels and more like a real, connected world. It's tall, angular, and framed in a way that makes it feel like the island's central pillar. The exterior of Mount Infinity has a stark, imposing look. You get the sense that everything you've gone through has been orbiting this one point, and now you're finally stepping into its shadow. The music leans into a more dramatic and ominous tone, yet it keeps the slow, looping calm that characterizes Digimon World as a whole. The atmosphere inside is serious, but still not frantic. It feels like walking through the halls of a final exam that's been waiting patiently for you to arrive. The structure of Mount Infinity is layered. You ascend through floors and sections, each with its own enemies, layouts, and minor challenges. There's a rhythm to it. Advance, test, breathe, and continue upward. It's as if the mountain is drawing representatives from across the island to stand in your way one last time. Familiar Digimon types appear alongside tougher, rarer ones. These encounters remind you of everywhere you've been, but with higher stakes. If you've trained well, fed carefully, and chosen good techniques, they feel like a fair test instead of a brick wall. Some floors feature mini-boss-style confrontations, where individual Digimon stand between you and further progress. These battles are less about surprise and more about endurance and preparation. The mountain doesn't change your core toolkit, it just asks you to use it more thoughtfully. You have to decide which moves to equip, which items to carry, and how much risk you're willing to take before healing. Mount Infinity demands that you understand your partner's strengths and weaknesses. Sections of the interior can feel maze-like on a first run. Paths branch and reconnect, doors loop back, and some screens look similar enough to confuse your sense of direction. Over time, though, you begin to see the pattern beneath the complexity. Mount Infinity feels different from every other place on File Island before you even step inside. On the map, and in your memory, it sits there like a quiet promise, a final destination that waits until you're ready. It's less a simple next area, and more a statement that your scattered journey around the island is finally coming together. Reaching Mount Infinity usually means you've done a lot already. You've rebuilt most of File City, recruited many Digimon, and seen how forests, tunnels, snowfields, and sewers all fit into the bigger picture. By the time you're standing at the base of the mountain, the island feels less like a collection of levels and more like a real, connected world. The exterior of Mount Infinity has a stark, imposing look. It's tall, angular, and framed in a way that makes it feel like the island's central pillar. You get the sense that everything you've gone through has been orbiting this one point, and now you're finally stepping into its shadow. The atmosphere inside is serious, but still not frantic. The music leans into a more dramatic and ominous tone, yet it keeps the slow, looping calm that characterizes Digimon World as a whole. It feels like walking through the halls of a final exam that's been waiting patiently for you to arrive. The structure of Mount Infinity is layered. You ascend through floors and sections, each with its own enemies, layouts, and minor challenges. There's a rhythm to it. Advance, test, breathe, and continue upward. Familiar Digimon types appear alongside tougher, rarer ones. It's as if the mountain is drawing representatives from across the island to stand in your way one last time. These encounters remind you of everywhere you've been, but with higher stakes. Some floors feature mini-boss-style confrontations, where individual Digimon stand between you and further progress. These battles are less about surprise and more about endurance and preparation. If you've trained well, fed carefully, and chosen good techniques, they feel like a fair test instead of a brick wall. Mount Infinity demands that you understand your partner's strengths and weaknesses. You have to decide which moves to equip, which items to carry, and how much risk you're willing to take before healing. The mountain doesn't change your core toolkit, it just asks you to use it more thoughtfully. Sections of the interior can feel maze-like on a first run. Paths branch and reconnect, doors loop back, and some screens look similar enough to confuse your sense of direction. Over time, though, you begin to see the pattern beneath the complexity. There's a quiet satisfaction in learning the layout. What first seemed like an intimidating labyrinth reveals itself as a series of loops and funnels designed to gradually push you higher. You realize that the designers didn't just want to overwhelm you, they wanted you to climb with a sense of deliberate progress. NPC dialogue and small story beats inside Mount Infinity give more context to File Island's troubles. You hear about the force controlling things from the shadows, the disturbances that drove Digimon away from the city, and the source of the chaos. These hints turn your ascent into a narrative journey, not just a series of stat checks. At the top of this structure waits one of the most iconic foes in Digimon World, Jijimon. As a massive, mechanized Digimon, it stands in stark contrast to the more organic, whimsical creatures you met at the start of the game. Its presence signals that the true threat to the island has always been something heavy, artificial, and deeply out of balance. The battle with Jijimon is designed to be a culmination. It tests your training, your technique choices, your item management, and your understanding of how your partner fights under pressure. Even if you're over-prepared, the fight still feels important, like the closing chapter of a long and complicated story. Visually, Jijimon's design reinforces themes you've already seen on the island. Drill Tunnel, Gear Savannah, and other mechanical areas hinted at the clash between nature and machinery. Jijimon stands at the top of that line, a symbol of what happens when that imbalance becomes extreme. Despite the weight of the moment, the game's tone remains surprisingly restrained. There are no explosive, cinematic cutscenes in the modern sense, just simple animations, text, and the weight of your own understanding. The drama comes as much from what you've experienced so far as from what's happening on screen. When you defeat Jijimon, there's a sense of released tension. You feel relief not just because you've beaten a tough boss, but because File Island's scattered problems suddenly make more sense. Something was pushing things out of alignment, and now, at least for the moment, that pressure has been removed. The ending sequence of Digimon World carries a quiet, reflective tone. There's a recognition that you've done a lot for the island, rebuilt File City, calmed hostile Digimon, and restored a kind of balance. Yet it never shouts victory at you. It simply acknowledges your work and lets the moment sink in. Some endings and final scenes can shift slightly depending on your prosperity and progress. If you've recruited more Digimon and fully developed File City, the world feels more complete as the story wraps up. The game rewards your thoroughness with a deeper sense of closure. One of the more emotional elements is the way the game handles your return to the human world. You came into the digital world as a kid pulled into a strange, distant place, and now you have to leave it behind. That departure can feel unexpectedly bittersweet, especially if you grew attached to your partner and your city. The idea of saying goodbye to your Digimon is particularly powerful. You've taken care of it, seen it evolve, trained it, healed it, and walked through every climate with it. Knowing that this shared journey is coming to an end lightly tugs at a quiet emotional thread. The ending doesn't erase what you've done. File City still exists in the state you left it, at least conceptually, and the island still feels like a place that could continue on in your absence. You have the sense that life goes on, even when you're not there to watch it. This is part of why so many players remember Digimon World's conclusion with a kind of soft nostalgia. The story is simple, but it's told through the time you spent, the routines you built, and the bonds you formed with a single partner. By the time the credits roll, the game has quietly turned your habits into its narrative. Mount Infinity's ascent and resolution also cast a new light on all the small moments earlier in the game. The meat farm, the gym, the toilets, the sewers, the curling minigame, the tunnels being dug. None of them were just filler. They were slices of a life lived in the digital world, all leading up to this last climb. Even after you've seen the ending, the structure of the game encourages replay. The idea of hatching a new partner, trying different evolution lines, and seeing how the journey changes is baked into its design. Mount Infinity becomes not just a final destination, but a recurring challenge at the end of each cycle. For players, that makes the mountain feel both final and familiar. You might dread it on your first run, respect it on your second, and eventually see it as a kind of ritual, the place every good run ends. Each time you climb, you bring a slightly different Digimon, a slightly different you, and a slightly different understanding of the island. There are also little story secrets and bits of lore tucked around the edges of the game. The Digimon Analyzer, NPC comments, and stray lines of dialogue hint at connections beyond File Island itself. You get glimpses of a wider digital world, of other places and conflicts that exist off-screen. Some of these hints would later connect to other games, anime seasons, or expanded media. At the time, though, they mostly functioned as tantalizing mysteries, suggesting there was always more to Digimon than what you saw in one game. That sense of unseen depth made Mount Infinity feel like the end of one chapter in a much larger universe. For someone drifting off to sleep while listening, imagining Mount Infinity can be soothing in a strange way. You can picture the long climb, the quiet halls, the occasional battle, and the final confrontation framed by the mountain's interior. It's a straightforward path upward, but filled with echoes of everything that came before. You might see, in your mind, your Digimon standing at your side at the summit. Tired but strong, carrying the weight of all your training sessions, all your mistakes, all your small victories. There's comfort in the idea that you reached this point together, and that what happens next is simply the story closing softly like a well-worn book. And when the credits fade, the memory of Mount Infinity doesn't vanish. It becomes part of your mental map of File Island, sitting there like a distant peak you know you can climb again someday. Next time, with a different partner, a different route, or a different pace, but always the same mountain, patiently waiting. From here, with the main story resolved, your attention naturally turns to another layer of the game, what was happening behind the scenes. How this strange mix of pet raising, RPG, and adventure came to be, why certain things were changed, and how the world of Digimon World was shaped during development and localization. Those quieter, meta-level facts have their own sleepy charm, as if pulling back the curtain on a dream without ruining its magic. Long before Digimon World became a cozy fall-asleep to memory, it started as a late 90s experiment on the original PlayStation. Back then, Digimon mostly existed as little virtual pets you clipped to your belt or backpack. The idea behind Digimon World was to take that tiny menu-based experience and stretch it into a full 3D adventure you could actually walk around in. That explains why the game feels like such a blend of genres. On one side, it's a pet-raising simulator, where you feed, train, praise, and scold your Digimon, just like the old handhelds. On the other side, it's an RPG-style adventure with a world map, NPCs, bosses, and a central mystery about File Island falling apart. From a technical perspective, having a partner always physically following you around in 3D was a bigger deal in the late 90s than it seems now. The team had to wrestle with early 3D pathfinding, making sure your Digimon didn't get stuck on geometry or disappear off-screen too often. The slightly clumsy movement and camera angles you remember are part of that early 3D charm, little artifacts of developers pushing hardware that wasn't built for complex AI companions. Hardware limits also shaped the world itself. Instead of creating one huge, seamless landscape, the designers built File Island out of many small, connected screens. Each screen is compact and reused visually, which kept memory usage manageable while still letting the island feel surprisingly big when you're actually walking through it. The low-poly environments and short music loops weren't just an aesthetic choice, they were a necessity. Textures had to be small, models had to be simple, and audio had to be efficient to fit on the disc and run smoothly. Today, those limits are exactly what give the game its soft, nostalgic look and sound, easy for your brain to hold without overwhelming detail. There's also an interesting tension between how open the game feels and how structured it actually is under the hood. You're free to wander, raise your partner however you like, and recruit Digimon in many different orders. But behind all that freedom, the developers laid out invisible requirements, prosperity thresholds, boss flags, time-based events, and evolution conditions. Evolution itself is one of the most intricate systems in Digimon World. Weight, discipline, happiness, training stats, battles, care mistakes, age, so many variables quietly feed into what your partner becomes next. The game never stops and explains the full formula. Instead, it leaves you to discover it through trial, error, rumors, and eventually guidebooks and online forums. In Japan, there were official guidebooks and magazines that spelled out some of these secrets. Lists of evolutions, charts of conditions, and maps of File Island helped dedicated players dig deeper. For many kids outside Japan, those same details arrived years later via fan-made FAQs and early websites, turning the game into a little mystery box everyone tried to decode together. Legalization added another layer to the game's identity. Translators and editors had to adapt menus, item names, and dialogue to a Western audience, often with limited space and tight constraints. Some lines came across a bit stiff or strange, giving Digimon World that slightly awkward, charming PS1-era localization flavor. Name choices sometimes shifted between Japanese and Western versions. Certain Digimon names, techniques, or items reflect the English naming conventions used in the anime and toys rather than the original Japanese terminology. That helped the game feel connected to the version of Digimon most Western kids already knew from TV and merch. A few bits of dialogue in the localized script ended up sounding cryptic or oddly phrased. In some cases, that's just the result of translating under pressure. In others, it's because the original Japanese text was already vague. Either way, those lines added to the game's mysterious aura. Players weren't always sure whether something was a hint, a bug, or just a weird sentence. Bugs and quirks became part of the game's legend over time. Players noticed odd things, Digimon evolving in unexpected ways, stats behaving strangely, or events triggering at unusual times. Some of these were real programming issues. Others were just side effects of very complex systems running in the background. Glitches also opened up unintended shortcuts and exploits. Speedrunners and dedicated fans eventually discovered ways to manipulate certain events, movement, or data to complete the game faster or in strange ways. Watching those runs today is like seeing the digital world taken apart and rearranged in ways the original devs never anticipated. The game's soundtrack has its own behind-the-scenes appeal. Composed within the limitations of the PS1's audio hardware, the tracks had to be short, loopable, and memory light. That's why so many themes feel like calm, repeating patterns that sink into your subconscious rather than big bombastic orchestrations. Because those tracks loop quietly in the background, they're easy to listen to for long stretches, perfect for anyone who played late into the night. They become less like songs and more like ambient textures woven into the feeling of the game. Years later, hearing just a few seconds of the File City or Native Forest theme can pull you right back into that world. Merchandise and cross-promotion also shaped how people discovered Digimon World. Some players came in through the anime first, then found the game on rental shelves or in bargain bins. Others knew Digimon only as those little brick virtual pets, and were surprised to see a full 3D island waiting on the PS1. Compared to some of its contemporaries, Digimon World was a bit unusual. While other monster games leaned heavily into linear story or pure battling, this one insisted on dailiness, hunger, sleep, bathrooms, fatigue. It asked you to look after your partner in small ways, turning care into a mechanic just as important as combat. That design choice didn't appeal to everyone at the time. Some players bounced off the constant needs and time limits, finding them stressful or confusing. For others, though, those very systems became the reason the game felt so alive, and the reason it stuck in their memory years later. Over time, fan communities grew around the game, sharing information, challenge runs, and personal stories. People compared notes on rare evolutions, swapped tips on training routes, and debated the best ways to maximize a partner's potential before it passed on. It turned a fairly solitary experience into a quiet, collaborative puzzle solved by thousands of players together. For many fans, Digimon World also acted as a bridge into the wider Digimon franchise. After raising their partners on File Island, they sought out the anime, other games, and even the virtual pets that had inspired this strange hybrid. In that sense, the game wasn't just a destination, it was a doorway. Looking back now, it's easy to see the rough edges. The loading, the pathfinding oddities, the sometimes confusing event triggers, all the little friction points of a 1999 PlayStation title. But those rough edges are wrapped around a core that feels surprisingly thoughtful. A world about care, routine, and cycles of growth and rebirth. That's likely why Digimon World lends itself so well to a fall asleep to format. It's not just nostalgia, it's the structure itself. A loop of feeding, training, exploring, and resting, carried by simple visuals and soft music, with just enough mystery to keep your mind gently occupied. Even discussions of its development and localization become part of that soothing texture. You can imagine a small team wrestling with memory budgets, translation space, and how to turn a little pixel pet into a full digital island. You can picture spreadsheets of evolution conditions, lists of NPC dialogue, and hand-drawn maps of File Island pinned up in an office somewhere. And just as your Digimon lives multiple lives through eggs and rebirths, Digimon World itself has lived multiple lives in players' memories. First as a strange, sometimes confusing game from childhood, then as a nostalgic classic revisited through emulation or old hardware, now as a soft, late-night topic to listen to while you drift off. Each revisit adds another layer of warmth and familiarity around the same low-poly island. From this behind-the-scenes perspective, there's only one more layer left to explore, the emotional one. Not just how the game was built or translated, but why it still feels comforting. Why raising a digital creature on a blocky little island can make you feel calmer, softer, and more at peace. That final reflection turns outward again, away from the code and release dates, and back toward you, lying there in the dark, halfway between waking and dreaming. By the time you step back from Digimon World and look at it as a whole, it doesn't just feel like a game you played once. It feels like a mood, a little pocket of time you can return to whenever you need something familiar and gentle. Even if you haven't touched it in years, the shapes, sounds, and rhythms of File Island tend to linger somewhere in the back of your mind. Part of that comes from how small and self-contained the world is. File Island isn't a sprawling open world with endless objective markers. It's a compact place with a handful of climates, a single city, and one big mountain. You can hold the whole thing in your head almost like a diorama, each area a tiny room in a mental dollhouse. The low poly graphics help with that feeling. They don't try to perfectly imitate reality. Trees are lumps, cliffs are angular slabs, Digimon are chunky and bright. Because everything is so stylized, your brain doesn't need to process fine detail. It just accepts the shapes and fills the gaps with your own imagination. When you revisit Digimon World now, those visuals can feel almost dreamlike. Edges blur in your memory, textures flatten, and what you really remember are impressions: the snowy place, the lava cave, the little square in File City. It's a bit like remembering a dream you had a long time ago, where the feelings are sharp even if the exact layouts aren't. The music plays a huge role in that softness. Most tracks are short, looping pieces that don't demand attention. They're there, but they're not trying to be the main character. They sit under everything like a steady pulse, turning long play sessions into something that feels more like a slow, continuous drift than a series of sharp scenes. File City's theme in particular is the kind of track that can live in your head for years. It's simple enough to hum, but not flashy enough to ever wear out its welcome. For some players, just a few notes are enough to bring back the feeling of watching their partner sleep in the middle of the square after a long day. Other areas have their own distinct moods: cozy forest, strange jungle, lonely canyon, cold silence of snow, muffled echo of sewers, the heavy hum of lava caves. Each track ties to a specific color palette and set of shapes, so the moment you hear it again, the whole region unfolds in your mind. That combination of sound and shape is part of why Digimon World is so easy to mentally replay, even without a console in front of you. People have taken those tracks and remixed them, extended them, and turned them into hour-long loops on the internet. Fans listen to the File City theme or the training music while studying, working, or trying to fall asleep. The game's audio, which once filled late-night living rooms, now works as gentle background noise in completely different parts of their lives. At the center of all this nostalgia is your partner Digimon. No matter how many times you play, the experience is always filtered through that one creature walking beside you. Its life is the shape of your run. Every victory, every mistake, every evolution, every quiet night of rest. The bond you build with a partner isn't expressed in long dialogues or cutscenes. It's expressed in feeding it when the hunger icon appears, taking it to the bathroom instead of ignoring it, letting it rest when it's tired, and praising it when it does well. These tiny routine actions accumulate into a feeling: this one is mine, even though the game never says that outright. Watching your Digimon sleep is one of the simplest and most comforting parts of the loop. The screen darkens a bit. The creature lies down. The world goes quiet. For a few moments, there's nothing to do but wait, listen to the music, and maybe feel your own body getting heavier at the same time. That shared rhythm between you and your partner, activity followed by rest, noise followed by quiet, is part of why the game works so well as bedtime material. Your Digimon's days are structured, repeating, predictable: training, battles, meals, bathroom breaks, bedtime. As you listen to that structure described out loud, it can gently synchronize with your own breathing and thoughts. There's also something deeply soothing about the game's acceptance of impermanence. No partner lasts forever. Every Digimon's life has a natural endpoint, whether it's reached peacefully or cut short by mistakes. But instead of treating that as failure, the game turns it into a cycle. One life ends, an egg appears, and you begin again with more knowledge than before. That cycle is where a lot of the emotional comfort lives. You're not punished for starting over. You're invited to. Each new partner is a chance to try a different evolution line, a new routine, a fresh approach to raising and exploring, without losing what you learned from the last run. In a quiet way, Digimon World teaches you how to be okay with moving on. A favorite form eventually disappears. Stats and skills vanish, but the island stays, the city stays, and you stay. You carry forward the invisible bits: experience, familiarity, the understanding of where to go and what to do. Even the softest systems, food, happiness, poop, praise, carry gentle messages. Feeding regularly keeps your partner healthy and responsive. Neglect creates chaos. Praise and scolding shape behavior over time, hinting that consistent attention and boundaries matter more than any one big moment. Those ideas are simple, but they sink in over hours and hours of small interactions. You don't sit there thinking, "I'm learning a lesson about care and routine." You just feel it as the world responds to what you do. And later, when you look back, it's easy to see how the game's mechanics echo simple truths from everyday life. In a fall asleep to context, those mechanics turn into a kind of guided meditation on gentle responsibility. As you hear about feeding, training, letting your Digimon rest, apologizing for mistakes, and trying again, your brain gets a story that is calm, repetitive, and low stakes. It's the opposite of adrenaline. It's a slow walk through something you can't really ruin, only shape differently each time. The nostalgia doesn't just come from the game's age or graphics. It comes from remembering who you were when you first played it, how old you were, what your room looked like, what TV you used. So when you think about File City or Native Forest now, it's not just the game you remember. It's the version of yourself that had time to wander through those screens for hours. Revisiting Digimon World as an adult can feel like checking in on an old childhood friend. The controls are clunkier than you remember, the load times stick out more, and some systems are rough around the edges. But the core feeling, caring for a little creature in a world that runs on simple loops, tends to land almost exactly the same. In that sense, the game becomes a kind of emotional anchor. Whenever life feels loud and complicated, you can mentally step back onto File Island, a place where the biggest problems are training, food, and making sure you get to a toilet in time. The stakes are small, but the comfort is big. When you listen to a long video about Digimon World to fall asleep, you're doing something very similar. You're letting your mind trade real-world worries for predictable digital ones. Hunger bars, stat training, recruiting residents, climbing a mountain. These are problems with clear rules and gentle consequences, which makes them much easier for a tired brain to handle. As the story winds down, you can imagine yourself standing in File City one last time. The square is full of Digimon you've recruited. Shops are open, lights are on, and the music loops softly in the background. Your partner stands beside you, maybe in its final form for this run, quietly waiting for your next move. You could go train, wander into the forest, or head toward Mount Infinity again, but you don't have to. You could also just save your game at Jijimon's house, watch the memory card icon flicker, and know that everything will still be there when you come back. In that moment, the digital world and your own room are both settling down for the night. If you close your eyes now, you might see flashes of places we've walked through together. The meat farm behind the house, the clanking green gym, the looping paths of native forest, the tunnels being drilled, the canyon cliffs, the snowy fields, the lava flows, the sewers, the secret rooms, the climb up Mount Infinity. All of them stitched together into one long, gentle tour across a low-poly island floating somewhere in your memory. You don't need to hold on to every detail. It's okay if parts of the story blur, if evolution charts or exact map layouts fade away. What remains is the feeling that you spent time caring for something small in a world that didn't rush you, and that this world is always there if you ever want to visit again. So as your breathing slows and your thoughts get softer, you can let File Island drift out of focus. The Digimon you've raised can curl up and sleep, the city can dim its lights, the mountain can stand quietly in the distance. For now, you've done enough, trained enough, explored enough, remembered enough. The console can power down, the TV can go dark, and you can let the last echo of the File City theme fade in your mind. Somewhere out there, in that low-resolution digital world, your partner is waiting patiently for the next time you decide to load your save. And here, in your own world, you can finally let go of the day and slip gently into your own digital dreams,